Hey guys, it's Jordan with your weekly refuge video. I'm excited. Today we are starting a new 3-week series called The You Effect. Now, I always think about fun ways to introduce these topics, and for this one, I'm just going to be honest and tell you I am a very bad speller. I mean, awful speller. There were times in college writing papers where spell check and autocorrect looked at me and said, dude, I have no idea what you're even trying to say. Like, I got nothing to help you with. I am so glad English is my first language. I cannot imagine learning this language after, later in life. There's so many rules and that are broken and exceptions. It's really frustrating. Like, I'm looking at my phone. Can anybody tell me why phone is spelled with a PH? Who thought that made sense? To make the point, the word two has not just two, but 3 words for two. To put it bluntly, that is too many, right? You get the point? And then the one even in my 30s, I still don't have figured out is affect versus effect. I have to Google all the time to make sure I'm using the right one. Now, I looked at it again for this sermon, and I think I got an idea. Affect with an A is a verb. It means to change something. So if I give you a compliment, I affected you. And so you feel better because I affected you with a nice compliment. Affect is a noun, the result of change. You see the commercials for these medicines, they give like 30 reasons you shouldn't take it. Like, you'll have diarrhea for a year if you take this. That's an affect, and you're not going to take that medicine because of the potential effect it could have on you. All right, so why are you getting a grammar lesson in the middle of this sermon? Let me tell you. The next few weeks, we're going to talk about the you effect. We're going to talk about the effect you have on people and situations around you. Hopefully, you're not giving somebody diarrhea for a year, but you are impacting people around you. Essentially, we're talking about influence. You hear about social media influencers. Well, in some capacity, we're all influencers. Now, for some of you, this is obvious. You have a leadership position, whether at church or school or something like that, and you're used to people really listening when you talk. Like, you have friends who come to you and they ask for your advice and they really listen. Now, this could be about serious stuff like, should they date this person or date at all? Or silly stuff like, who's the best Avenger? And you would say it's Iron Man, of course. For the rest of you, you might think, well, I don't know if I really have much influence. Even in my house, I'm not really the person who speaks up a lot. Only person that listens to me is the dog, and sometimes he ignores me, right? Maybe you're that person. You say, I don't really change the way people behave or act, and maybe you don't even want to. Well, wherever you're at, either way, it's normal, and it's fine. But for both ends of the spectrum and everybody in between, here's the point I'm going to make today. I don't think any of us truly realize the effect we have on those around us, the influence we carry into every room we go. I think we take it for granted. We don't think about it. And I'll tell you this for sure, we do not utilize it the best way we can. So for this lesson, we're going to be looking at a story in the Bible that has a little unsung hero. I love to pull out these little corners of the Bible. Now, to orient yourselves, we're going to be in the Gospels. Remember, the Gospels are the 4 books of the Bible that start the New Testament. They give us an overview of the life of Jesus. More specifically, we're going to be in the book of John. John is my favorite person in the Bible. He started as a hothead who at one point asked Jesus to destroy a ton of people in a town. And by the end of his life, he's an old man just preaching over and over the love of God as shown through Jesus. Jesus had a tremendous impact on the life of John. They were close too. John says, I'm the disciple that Jesus loved. And at one point, Jesus is on the cross dying, and he looks at John and says, hey, John, take care of my mother. Like, that's the kind of relationship they had. Now, all of the Bible is God-breathed, profitable for teaching, and you can trust it. But just know, when you read John, John was somebody that Jesus himself trusted. Let me set the scene. During Jesus' public ministry, he traveled for 3 years. And it became a movement. It was a big deal. In a time when the average town was about 70 to 100 people, at times Jesus drew crowds of thousands upon thousands. This was a huge deal. Now, Jesus had a lot of influence. Now, whether people came because they heard of his teaching, they wanted a miracle, they wanted healing, I don't know, but they came. And so in this scene, on this particular day, it was no different. We're in John chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, he looks over at Philip and says, "Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Poor Philip. I mean, imagine the scene. You just started working for this guy, part of this movement, and now thousands of people come rushing towards you, and your boss, Jesus, looks at you and says, "Hey, how are you going to feed these people?" Now, it says 5,000 later in the story, but that was the men. This isn't counting the women, the wives they had with them, and then you add in children. We're looking at 15,000 plus people. And so Jesus looks at Philip and says, "Hey, Philip, how are we going to feed these people?" I mean, Philip had to look at Jesus and be like, "Hey, this is more your department, man. This is like a Jesus-sized problem. Why are you asking me?" In fact, Philip said it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one of these people just to have a bite, Jesus. I mean, Philip is doing the math saying, hey, it would take $20,000 to $30,000 to feed these people. I mean, I can't just run to McDonald's, get 10,000 Big Mac specials, 10,000 more Happy Meals, right? I don't even have the money or the resources to go do this. The story continues. Another one of Jesus' disciples, Andrew, this is Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. And he says, "Hey, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. How far will they go among so many?" And so Andrew says, "Hey, this kid has a Lunchable. Jesus, can you do anything with that?" Apparently only one mom packed a lunch for their son before they went off to go see Jesus. Andrew thought it was worth pointing out, and actually it was. Verse 10, Jesus said, "Have everybody sit down." There was plenty of grass in the place, so they sat down. About 5,000 men were there, then the women and the children. Jesus then took the loaves, he gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And the people saw the sign Jesus performed. They began to say, "Surely this is a prophet who has come into the world." In fact, this is why Jesus says he did miracles, to back up his claims that he's God. Now, there are all kinds of questions that come to my mind when I read this story. Was it buffet style? Like, how did they do this? Where did they get the baskets to put everything in? But I think the big question we should ask, who in this story had the most influence? Now, obviously, Jesus is the influencer that drew the crowd. Jesus is the one who performed the miracle, so we'd give him the crown on that. His disciples, by association, were influential. But the superstar of the story for me, the unsung hero, is this little boy with the Lunchable who comes forward and says, "This is what I have." Where the disciples pointed it out, he could have run. He could have said no. He could have scarfed it. It wasn't a lot of food. He said, "This is mine." But he was willing to hand it over. In the end, this is how Jesus performed the miracle. It wasn't the amount of what he had that made him influential. It was his willingness to let it be used by Jesus. This is a bigger deal than we imagine, even in the context of the day, because back then, kids weren't seen the same way. No one would have seen this kid as having any influence whatsoever. That didn't stop him from stepping up and being used by Jesus. And he impacted thousands, the Bible says. Can you imagine the conversation when he got home with his mom? Mom, they picked me. I came forward, I gave them the food, and Jesus used it to feed everybody there. And they stayed and they listened to his teaching. No one, not even his mom, would have imagined this little kid could have had that kind of influence. I bet this kid didn't think that. See, it didn't matter that he didn't take the stage. It didn't matter that he wasn't well known, that he wasn't in a position of leadership. It didn't matter that he wasn't the teacher or the preacher up on stage. It didn't matter that he wasn't super athletic, super popular, super academic. It didn't matter that John didn't even care to give us his name. What mattered was his willingness to be used. See, Jesus didn't care about any of that other stuff. It was about the power of Jesus and what Jesus was capable of working through someone who was willing to be used by Jesus. When it comes to affecting the world around you, it's all about your willingness to show up and offer what you have. But before you can do that, you have to realize this one simple truth. You have more of an effect than you think. I mean, imagine if the boy listening to Jesus that day thought, I have no impact or influence in this situation. He just bounced. He left. There'd be no story to tell. In the same way, when we convince ourselves that we have no impact, no influence, it doesn't matter what we do or don't do, we miss so many opportunities to minister to people around us, and there's so many stories we miss out on. The way we see influence needs to change. We need to realize that having influence, having impact, it's really just about being willing to do something with what you have, no matter how big or small. It's more than doing more. It's more than having more. It's more than knowing more people. I mean, that can be a part of it. It's really about offering what you have to those people already around you, whether that's your family, your friend group, your section of the band, your teammates, your siblings, your classmates. And then just imagine what God could do through you to your impact and effect in the world. Even if it feels impossible, even if it feels like you don't have anything to offer, just consider the possibility that what Jesus did with that kid, that boy, that meal, he can do through you and have a greater impact than that day. Here's a few steps to consider as you mull this over. Number one, identify the who. Who are the people closest to you? Who are the people you already have an influence with? Maybe it's your siblings again, your teammates. Who are the people closest? Number one. Number two, identify the need. What do they need? Maybe they just need some encouragement. Maybe they need time, someone to listen, someone to help them with homework. You probably, just like me, overlook all the time the opportunities you have in front of you to influence somebody in a positive way. Number three, identify what you can do to help and then do it. This is the important part, gang. So who is it you have influence and impact on already? Because you do. What do they need? And then what can you do? Start small and you will see the ripple effects of your actions. Now, before we leave, I want to flip the script real quick. I'm going to ask you to consider this. What's somebody in your life that had a great impact on you? And when you think about you, why you are who you are today and not some worse version of you, who was it that spoke into your life, who walked with you through a season? One, be grateful, thank them if you haven't. But two, understand you have the ability to do the exact same thing in somebody else's life. This is why we do small groups, by the way. We want us to come together and do life together, not just a monologue of me preaching at you. So after this sermon, from 7 to 8, you have your small groups. Because the people you're around, they have an effect on you, but you also have an effect on them. And so we come around the Word, we come around Jesus, and we spur each other on to be better for His glory and our good. The question is not, do you have an impact on others? The question is, how do you use that influence, that impact, to bring glory to our Heavenly Father, to make their life better? Ultimately, in the end, God is the one who has the power to change people. All we have to do is show up and offer what we have, and He'll do the rest. Guys, I hope this helps you see some things differently, even during quarantine. We have a huge impact on those around us, probably more so your family than ever in your life. I know when I come home, the attitude I bring into the door, it changes the entire mood of the household. You have that same impact and influence, so use it, again, for God's glory and the good of those around you. I miss you. I love you. I can't wait to see you again. Bye.
Guys, as always, we do these little bits here at the end just to make you smile, bring a little joy to your day. Your life group leaders, they're great about sending in videos, but every now and then I want to give them a break, give them a week off, and so sometimes it's just me, and things get a little weird. I saw a music video. It was amazing. It was a guy singing a love story about his tigers. And now I don't have a tiger, but, well, you'll see.
Till all the hunters lay down their guns, tell them that the puppy needs a little bit of love. Let him run the yard, let him roam his man, stand back and marvel, what a beautiful dog. 'Cause I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. I saw Heisenberg, I saw a man. I can give him a home, safe and warm. When the law wants to ban me, you tell me who's wrong. Every time you move, every time you breathe, I can feel his power, I can feel his peace. 'Cause I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. I saw Heisenberg, I saw a man. I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. Ooh, I saw Heisenberg, now I saw a man. Time is a ticket, will soon be gone, so you better take a picture. What a sad, sad song. All that Armageddon, such a painful loss. When they kill all the puppies in the Holocaust. 'Cause I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. I saw Heisenberg, I saw a man. I saw a man. Well, I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. Well, I saw Heisenberg, now I understand. I saw Heisenberg, and I saw a man. I saw Heisenberg, I saw a man. Oh, I saw Heisenberg, do you understand? I saw Heisenberg, and I saw a man.